I was still learning the sounds of the house when my father called. The place had its own language. Pipes that sighed before warming, a loose window that tapped at night when the wind came from the west, the refrigerator's low hum like a held breath. None of it was fancy. That was the point. I'd bought it with a careful, unromantic math, years of saving, a promotion I didn't celebrate, a loan I understood too well. When I slept there the first week, I slept deeply, as if my body finally believed I wasn't going anywhere. My father didn't ask how the move went. He asked when he could come by. He stood in the living room without sitting, looking at the bare walls, the stacked boxes. He had the same posture he always used when he planned to explain something obvious to me, chin slightly raised, hands open as if offering reason itself. "You know your sister's situation," he said. "This place would help her more." It wasn't phrased as a request, it was a correction, as if I had misfiled a document and he was pointing out the proper drawer. I waited. He filled the silence with details that were not new. Her kids, her rent, the way things had fallen through. "Again," he said, deserving once, then again, testing the word to see if it fit better. For the second time, he spoke about family fairness in the abstract, never mentioning my name. I had practiced this moment without knowing it. Years of practice, really, of listening while decisions were made around me. When I was younger, I used to think if I explained myself clearly enough, something would click. Now I knew better. Clarity wasn't the issue. "I'm not giving the house to anyone," I said. He blinked, not angry, surprised. "Don't be stubborn." That was the limit of his persuasion. Stubbornness was my flaw. Generosity was hers. This was how the story always went. We stood there, the boxes between us like evidence. He left after saying he'd think about it, which meant he would return with a sharper edge. He did, 2 days later. This time he sat as if preparing for a longer conversation. He spoke about the will. He used careful language, how things could be adjusted, how choices reflected values. He didn't threaten, he explained consequences. I felt something settle in me then. Not fear, but a strange relief. The worst card was on the table. It was smaller than I'd imagined. "Okay," I said, "then we should talk with a lawyer." He frowned. "There's no need to make this formal." "There is," I said, not loudly, just enough to end the discussion. I didn't tell him about the paperwork right away. That mattered to me, that it wasn't reactive. I asked for a meeting the following week during business hours. I watched him recalibrate me in real time, searching for the angle he'd missed. We met in a neutral office, glass walls, a plant that looked convincingly alive. The lawyer was someone I'd worked with once before, when I refinanced. He nodded to my father politely, then to me. Authority doesn't announce itself. It sits down and opens a folder. My father repeated his position with the confidence of repetition. The lawyer listened, asked a few clarifying questions, then turned to me. "Would you like to present the documents now?" he said. I slid the folder across the table. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. The paperwork was dull to look at. No revelations, no dramatic signatures, just a timeline, years earlier when my sister had needed immediate cash to settle debts. She'd signed a waiver tied to a family property arrangement, one my father had orchestrated and assured me was temporary. It was legal, notarized, and final. She had traded future claims for present relief. The lawyer explained it neutrally, pointing to clauses, dates. My father's face changed in increments. First, dismissal. This must be a misunderstanding. Then irritation. Why was this being brought up now? Then silence, the kind that means the math has finished. "This means," the lawyer said gently, "that any redistribution tied to that property or assets derived from it cannot be compelled, including this house." No one said my sister's name. No one needed to. My father leaned back. He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He stared at the glass wall as if looking through it to something he'd misplaced. "So," he said finally to me, "you planned this." I shook my head. "I planned to live here." That was the truest thing I'd said all day. We left separately.
In the parking lot, he paused as if deciding whether to say something else. He didn't. He drove away slower than usual. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. My sister called once, confused, then angry, then tired. I listened more than I spoke. I didn't send the documents. I didn't explain. Authority had already spoken. Anything more would have been performance. The will never came up again, not because it didn't exist, but because it no longer worked the way it was meant to. Power once named has limits. Months passed. I painted the living room a color I liked and didn't justify. I learned which floorboard creaked and stepped around it. Sometimes my father visited and commented on the weather. Sometimes he didn't visit at all. We didn't resolve much. Favoritism doesn't evaporate because it's documented, but something shifted all the same. Conversations shortened, expectations narrowed. The space between us became clearer and oddly more livable. At night, when the house settled into its sounds, I felt a different kind of inheritance take shape. Not money, not approval, but the quiet knowledge that I could stand still and not be moved. I kept the paperwork in a drawer I rarely opened, not as a weapon, as a reminder that dignity doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just refuses calmly and waits for the room to adjust.